Welcome to Agents of IT, where we decode the future of enterprise automation and explore what it really takes to achieve agentic, zero-ticket IT. We chat with a wide variety of guests to discover what's broken in IT operations and spotlight the tech and teams leading the zero-ticket charge. Whether you're a CIO trying to shift from reactive firefighting to strategic value, or an automation architect building the next-gen service desk, this is the space for you.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean Hoyer, CEO of Resolve.
And I'm Ari Stowe, COO of Resolve. Welcome to another episode of Agents of IT. So we recently recorded an episode with the CEO of Espressive, Pat Calhoun, and we are recording a prequel to that because some really exciting news has happened. Resolve and Espressive are merging, and obviously that adds some context to the episode you're about to hear. And so we wanted to just kind of start this off and give you a little bit of what does it mean for the market, what does it mean for the companies, what does it mean for all of the great things that we've been looking to do as two companies now coming together as one great company. So Sean, any additional things you want to add there before we hand off to Pat?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Pat and I, Espressive Resolve have been partnering for quite some time now on different customer engagements, and what we found is that there's a real meaningful synergy between these two companies, and a lot of that, is really focused on what Espressive is phenomenally good at is engaging with employees and engaging with people that have issues and challenges and speaking their language and like understanding their context, right? And being able to translate their problems into things that on the other side of it, that a system like ours, an automation system, can then pick up and take action with. And so I think the combination of these two companies gives us the ability to serve our combined customers in a much more meaningful way, right? So you combine our two solutions together, and we can go from a 50% reduction in tickets to an 80% reduction in tickets, and it's a really interesting kind of compounding factor of combining a truly robust automation engine with an LLM-enabled chat interface for employees, and so. I'd love to hear, Pat, as our guest, I'd love to hear your take. And you've spent way more time in this space of ITSM and serving customers than I have. So I'd love to hear from you, how you see this merger and this partnership really helping and impacting customers.
Yeah. It's been 10 years that we've been on this journey now. And one of the things that we started to, and you'll be hearing more about this later, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of what's, we're going to be talking about later. But one of the things that we definitely started to notice about 3.5, 4 years ago, as we embarked on our agentic journey, where we deployed our own large language model, et cetera, is customers continue to see a ton of value in helping automate the resolution of employee issues. But the way that they're looking at it, it's much broader than what it has been historically. And so it's interesting because if you take a look at pretty much any company's top 10 call drivers, a lot of them are very similar, right? I need access to software, I'm locked out, I need something. But what we're hearing from our customers now has been, I need to get beyond the top 10. I need to get into the top 20. And once they start thinking about this, they're also thinking about how can the virtual agent become this sort of the system of engagement for employees who are trying to get access to resources that really have nothing to do with the service desk, or at least not the IT service desk. Yeah. And it could be they have questions about a purchase order, so they really want to integrate into Coupa, they want to integrate into SAP. Their sales teams are looking to get information about their deals, their opportunities, so they're looking for a way to engage and get data out of Salesforce. And one of the challenges that this has really created for us is, we basically built our platform and our automation engine to really serve a very specific purpose, right? Lightweight integrations to go and tackle the easy stuff like password resets and so on. But we don't really have a platform that allows you to go and design these very complex workflows with systems that have hundreds of APIs, and certainly not in a visual way. And so as I see the market continuing to progress in the world of agentic AI, there is a need to continue to drive more and more automations. People want to use MCP. They want to connect MCP to virtually everything they have inside the organization. And this is where I see sort of the value of the two of us, the two of companies getting together, because you're delivering that one piece of the puzzle that we just historically haven't focused on, which is building those complex automations. And what I see the value of us helping resolve is, as all these people are building all these automations, you run into a discoverability problem. Like, how do I know how to find automation that does X? I don't even know what automations exist. And in some cases, they just want something. And if there's automation, then they want to leverage it, but they don't even know if it even exists. And so being able to understand that human language and then being able to automatically discover what services are available and just launch it for them is a true game changer.
Absolutely. All right, Ari, you get the final word.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I think the coolest part about this was, with this news and with this happening, going back and thinking about what we talked about, and I wouldn't have changed a single thing, right? Like, that's the great part about the synergies of these two companies is we've both looked at how do we bring, AI and automation to a user without them having to learn IT or learn the business, but to be able to solve that problem where they are, how they want. And I think both companies were striving to that, and we've just come at it from different angles, and now we get to take the best of both worlds and put them together. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm really excited for you guys, the listeners, to go listen to the rest of this episode, because I think there's some really great stuff, and we like to hear Pat's origin story, his superhero origin story as a part of the next episode. So thank you very much, and enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Sean Hoyer, CEO of Resolve.
And I'm Ari Stowe, this time just COO of Resolve, and very excited to be joined today by Pat Calhoun, CEO of Espressive, and really excited to dig in and talk about zero-ticket IT and agentic AI. So let's jump in. Pat, you want to give us a little bit of a history of yourself and intro?
Sure. Started my career as a software engineer, eventually ended up starting companies, and then at one point ended up running products at ServiceNow. So I worked for Frank Sluman there. It was a great journey. I got to learn a lot about how people are using service desk tools such as ServiceNow, et cetera. And one of the things that always really surprised me was the fact that, and this is back in 2016, 2017 when I left, but even back then, it was surprising to see that for most issues coming into the service desk, it still required a human to get involved to resolve. And so that really led a number of us at ServiceNow to say, there's got to be a better way to do this. And we started Espressive. So back in 2016, we started Espressive.
Was there a particular event or thing that kind of sparked that? I mean, like obviously just the frustration of just collecting data and having to have a person involved. Yeah. Just curious, like what was the spark, the moment that sparked it all?
Well, I think that has to go way back. But even before I was a software engineer, my first job was actually being on the service desk. All right. I did my fair share of password reset.
You put in your due. You paid your dues. Right. You put in your time.
I was on the front line, and so And so when I was at ServiceNow, and really what excited me about ServiceNow is because I had that history, right? So it really resonated with me to have, a better tool for the service desk to be able to manage their tickets, et cetera. I mean, it makes a ton of sense. But again, it was really, having been in those shoes, having done more than my fair share of password resets, it's like, oh, here's another one. And what happens is you just get crushed with the redundant, repetitive tasks and issues coming in, and you really never get to focus on the things that actually do require a human to get involved. And that was really the thing that led me to say, there's just got to be a better way.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I know Ari always likes to start at the beginning, so I appreciate you for starting at the very beginning.
The origin story.
Well, it actually goes further than that. But we're not going to worry about when I was born. Yeah.
We'll cut here with a young Pat, and then we'll fade into the backstory.
Pat. So really interested, maybe at a high level, kind of what this journey's look like for you. to really lean into AI and be like a pretty early mover in the space, especially when it comes to like the ITSM movement and really pushing boundaries there. Like what, walk us through kind of when you started the company and like the journey that you've been on since then, because, your company and your products had a tremendous impact. So I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah. Well, we have to sort of go back in time in 2016. The state of the art from an AI perspective was dramatically different than where we are today, right? We built our own NLP stack. We built our own machine learning stack. And really the reason why we did this is because we knew that we needed something that was highly customized to understand the language of the service desk. And so we went through this, this early discovery as we deployed to the first 2, 3, 4, 5 customers. And we quickly realized, oh my God, every time we deploy one of these customers, we have to do a ton of heavy lifting to go and basically train the engine around like, what is a password reset? What is a software request, et cetera. And this really led us to rethink the whole platform and say, because as we started to do these deployments, we saw that there was a pattern. It really didn't matter where you worked. Your IT issues were basically the same. Like, I'm locked out, I need access to this, I need access to that, whatever. And so we said, there's got to be a better way where we essentially build a central language model, if you will, right, that we can then repurpose to every one of our customers. And then we can extend from a customer by customer basis, we can extend that so that it understands the terminology and the buzzwords and whatever of that particular customer. That was a big discovery for us, because once we actually went down that path, our deployment times were cut by, I don't know, I'm going to say, and I'm pulling this number out of my hat here, but probably somewhere around 80 to 85%.
That's big.
And so that insight and the ability to have a platform that enabled us to be able to deploy that way and to have this central brain that would essentially get cloned into every one of our customer environments was also sort of the beginning for us of thinking, well, how do we get out of this world where we're building these things to begin with, right? And is there a way where we can eliminate the need for, a lot of the static configuration, that initial brain that we had? Can we actually move towards something that's really looking more at leveraging language heuristics and semantics as opposed to sort of this traditional NLP way of doing things? But all of that infrastructure was already pre-built because we went through those, those early learnings.
Yeah. There's the impact of the Gen AI technology has been substantial across so many areas of business. I mean, especially, ours, and speaking about IT, I'm definitely interested, again, like you guys are an early player and you've had to kind of adapt to the evolution of technology. What have you seen the impact on your business be of the advancements of generative AI?
Yeah. I'd say I'll talk about our business, and then I'll talk about how our customers actually experience it. And then I'll talk as well about some of the challenges that some of our partners actually have with this new way of doing things, because it is.
See, Ari, I just asked 3 questions right there.
I like it.
There you go.
I like it. Line them up. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. So from our business, and so when I was talking about the fact that we knew that we had to go morph into something different. And so this is where we started to build what we call Barista LLM, but essentially our large language model, right? And when we did that, the impact to us as a business meant that a go live process, like when the initial process of taking a customer, integrating into their environment, learning everything, et cetera, was still, as I said earlier, was a lot of heavy lifting. But with this new approach, the system, because of the way we built our LLM, the system essentially trained itself on the customer's environment, on the customer's content, the customer's data, the customer's tickets, the customer's integrations, et cetera. And so a go live process for us has really moved from a heavy technical, configuration, training, all that stuff, to essentially focusing more on the relationship, focusing more on the business outcomes that we want to focus on and really deliver value. And so it's really helped us scale a lot better. From a customer perspective, it means that the deployment times have gone from, months to weeks, and in some cases, even less than that.
Yeah.
And getting immediate value out of the gate. So that's been great. The challenge, I think, some of the things like Gen AI has actually introduced with some of our partners is people who come from the world that we come from, chatbots, virtual agents, whatever it is you want to call it, they have an assumption, and a lot of this is just because of the way that they've used it, but they have an assumption that things should be very consistent, right? So if you ask a question, the answer should be exactly the same every single time. The reality is it doesn't work that way. In the world of Gen AI, if you were to go to Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and you ask it the exact same question 2 times, you're going to get a completely different answer both times. They're both factually correct. And
just
so
a different way of hearing the same
It's just
answer.
a different, exactly. Yeah. So when you put your QA hat on and you're looking at, is this pass the test or not the test? It has added a level of complexity because you're not just doing pattern matching anymore. Now you actually have to understand the content. You have to understand, is this answer factually correct or not? So it does.
You're not QAing the exact outcome anymore. You're QAing the intent and the response and the value behind. Like, did this get me to where I was going or not? Not did this take me down the journey exactly as it was mapped on paper. That's a fair point.
But from an end user perspective, the experience is so much better because in the past, the best that we could do is basically pull a blurb out of some knowledge article and say, well, this text is relevant to your question.
And with no context, right? Like,
but the answer was never really addressing the question specifically. It was just giving you a blurb that was relevant to the question that you're asking. Now, because Gen AI allows you to craft an answer specific to the way that you ask the question, making sure that we're only leveraging official content. And so we're not hallucinating anything, right? We actually have to make sure that we're leveraging actual content, but it can be reworded in a way that it actually answers your question. So it's a lot easier to consume. It's a lot more user friendly, right? As opposed to reading this static text and trying to reverse engineer how this is really answering my question to begin with.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean,
I'm gonna keep going, Ari, unless you ask.
No. I got a question. I mean, it sounds like you're doing some really fun and exciting things. I'm curious, like, do you have an example of an outcome that you've driven with a customer that like just sticks in your brain, right? I mean, like I know Sean and I have worked with a couple of our customers, and there are a few that you're just like, we did something really cool here, and I like take with me and tell, even not when I'm talking not about automation, right? Is like this crazy kind of transformation or experience. Are there any customer stories or customer impacts that like kind of stick in your brain?
I mean, I have a million, but I'm going to give you like a very, very simple one, right? So we had a customer that decided that they wanted to deploy us wall to wall for everything. Like we were essentially the engagement platform in front of all of enterprise content, right? And we're like, okay, we haven't actually done this before, so we're going to see how this works. And they had all these policies around hazardous materials and dress code and whether you're allowed to actually have a tattoo or an earring or nose piercing or whatever. And we're like, oh Lord, like, how is this going to work? Like, so here we go. And so they ingested all the content and it was amazing. It was amazing. It just worked. It actually understood all the content. It knew precisely how to answer every single question. And so while it's a relatively simplistic one, it was one of those where sometimes you build something for a specific purpose, and then somebody tries to use it for a different purpose, and you're not really sure whether it's actually going to work, and then you're surprised how well it's actually working. Now we have this being used for you name it. I mean, people have, policy questions were being deployed in government websites, employee or resident facing employee or government websites, you name it. I mean, we're ingesting everything, but this technology is just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. But it's not just Gen AI. It's a platform that knows how to train itself in real time based on content. And that's the part that a lot of organizations haven't quite figured out yet, is how do you actually train an engine without going through 8 months and a ton of money spent in training tokens? How can you eliminate all that and actually build a platform that does that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, so I'll get to a question here, but just some background. So we were having a conversation with the other day, where the customer was, asking us a lot of questions like, hey, what out of the box functionality do you have that can answer these questions? And we got down to this point where it was like, listen, we have out of the box functionality that can answer some of these great questions, but really the value comes when you start to build your domain specific language into those answers, right? And so I think like to me, that's one of the things that really takes it to the next level. It's also one of those things that gives you that wow moment. Like anyone can go to ChatGPT and ask, how do I use VLOOKUP in Excel? But if you go ask it like, how do I use VLOOKUP in an Excel to make a quote? And it responds back with an answer from an article that it's learned about how you use Excel, that's when you're like, holy cow, man, this thing is my buddy now, right? So I guess like to go back to the question on that is like, what is it like when you finally get those experiences to click with your customers when you see that? Yeah. Like I can imagine the experience with that customer that you mentioned was like kind of like a cool wow moment. Like, wow, this is magic, right? It's almost like you did a magic trick.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, I think the example that you're providing about VLOOKUPs, ChatGPT is great for doing that. Like, just give me a generic answer for doing something where the answer is universally the same across every company.
Yeah.
The challenge is when you're asking questions where the answer is very different from company A to company B. In some cases, the outcome is actually nothing to do with an answer, but it's really an automation, right? And that's one of the things that we've actually been doing since the beginning. And we'll talk more about automation in a little bit here in Agentic and so on. But and in some cases, it's really a catalog item, right? And so in the world of service management, catalog items are actually a better outcome than a knowledge article. And so having a platform that understands, should I be using an automation? Should I be using a catalog? Should I be using a knowledge article, et cetera? But back to ChatGPT for a moment. If you go to ChatGPT and you ask about your 401k plan, I can guarantee you that it's going to have an opinion. The problem is that opinion is actually not grounded in the reality of your company.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge that a lot of organizations have. They'll come to me and they'll say, well, could we just use Copilot? Could we just use ChatGPT? And I was like, well, sure, you can, but it really depends on the level of efficacy that you want and whether you want these answers to be grounded in your environment or you just want generic answers. But that's the big difference, right? You can ask a very specific question around VLOOKUPs or how do I create an Outlook signature. But when you're asking about parental leave or even how do I reset a password, like ChatGPT doesn't even know what passwords your company uses, right? Yeah. Or what password schemes or password tools or whatever. It has no idea. It doesn't know if your SAP is actually connected to SSO or not. So it's just making stuff up. And it's really not that helpful to an employee from that perspective.
Yeah, and that's what we see a lot is like those happen to be some of the most impactful things. Like you've mentioned password reset a few times. Like pretty much every customer we've worked with from an automation standpoint, if you go and analyze their tickets, the biggest culprit, the largest volume, it's always something around account management or password reset or access to a given system. And, as like I did my time at the help desk too, as someone who's experienced the just boring mechanical, do these 5 steps kind of a task and you do them on repeat every freaking day. It makes your job monotonous. And so I am interested, Pat, for you guys, because you guys don't just do password reset and stuff like that. I'm interested what you've seen as far as what's been the biggest impact for you guys in that kind of realm of helping you to do one of these service catalog items, helping you actually execute automatically.
Yeah. I mean, password resets are, like you said, and here we are in 2025. How could that still be, the number one call driver in the service desk? It's just mind blowing, right? But when I look at one of the first things that we do when we engage with a customer is we'll do a ticket analysis, right? And our goal with the ticket analysis is to be able to predict what the outcome would be once they would actually deploy our product. Now, we do it mostly because it makes the customer feel good, because the reality is the outcome looks pretty much exactly the same for every company. And it's 80% of the top 10 is exactly the same everywhere. And number 2 on the list, sometimes number 1, sometimes number 3, is access to software. And here we are, there's catalog items. Good luck finding them. Because people, I was at ServiceNow, so I have to take some level of blame for this, right? But people don't know the difference between an incident and a request and a catalog. And like, what do you mean I have to go and add something in the catalog? I'm not shopping here. This is not like an Amazon experience. I just need access to DocuSign. And so people don't think that way. And so they're calling the service desk, hey, I need access to DocuSign. And here we go again. But, and the problem is that it's actually kind of related to the password reset as well. IT is just notorious for having one-off things to solve every individual problem. So I have a password reset tool. You want access to software, you go over here. You want to manage your distribution list, you go there. I got a day job. I can't figure out all these tools. And so the value of a lot of these virtual agents, agentic agents or whatever, is to have one place that I can go to and I can ask virtually any question. Maybe behind the scenes, there's still a million different tools. I don't care. Whatever works for that company works for that company. But don't expose me to that, because I'll never, when I have a problem, I can guarantee I'm not going to remember which one of those tools I'm supposed to go to.
I think it's a combination of things, right? I mean, you're 100% right, but like, and I'm shamefully admitting here, I am an ITIL expert. So like, I have been trained in the ways. I am an ITIL Jedi. I actually did ITIL training for a little bit of time, and like, I love the concept of building a process to get customers solutions faster, but ITIL wasn't that. Like, ITIL is so much about getting the company and my customer to speak my language, which is such a wild concept to me as a developer. Like, my whole life has been trying to explain what I'm doing in English to somebody who doesn't understand what I'm doing. And here we are saying, hey, everyone in my organization, learn what IT does and the way we talk about it as we put it in this service catalog. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about what you guys did is, by putting NLP in front of these things, it allows me as a customer to come and tell you the thing I'm having wrong. And then you do that translation of this is what they actually mean and this is what they need. Because that changes the journey, right? Like, if I'm not over here trying to shop the Cheesecake Factory menu of items that's like, what password reset to what system? I don't know. I'm trying to get in and log a sale, right? Like, so I think that's one of the, the other side to the coin of what you were talking about from a service catalog perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody says, I need to reset my password. I saw this just a couple of weeks ago. I need to reset my SAP password. And then the bot comes back and says, is your SAP account connected to SSO? And they're like, SS what?
What's SSO?
What?
I mean, I think that is one of the most compelling and interesting things about your solution, honestly. And again, like, going back to my, help desk days, most engineers are a bit curmudgeon-y. And so, the ID10T error happened quite a bit, which is just like, people just fundamentally didn't understand their machine. And so when you just don't understand the machine, it's hard to walk someone through troubleshooting and resolving it. So we'd end up taking over their screen and just doing it on their behalf,
Yep.
It's something really compelling about the way, your model simplifies things and understands their language, but also kind of translates back to them these fairly technical tasks where they might be taking it themselves to be able to do on their own. Like, I don't know, maybe you can share a little bit about that, or like what you've seen there as far as your kind of employee experience of like, because again, knowledge articles are typically written in like technical jargon. And so, I'd love to hear.
The issue is in part that, and that's where I think Gen AI comes in and can really help simplify things, but that's not the problem, right? One of the challenges that we saw when we were at ServiceNow, and we built a service portal at ServiceNow, and then we saw some other competitors that we were kind of competing with, and back some years ago, that we really looked at. Their background was really more content. They came from Google or Facebook or whatever, and so their approach was always first and foremost leveraging content. I think if you talk to any CIO or any service desk leader, they're all going to tell you our our knowledge discipline sucks because our teams are so busy dealing with fires, they just don't have time to create content. But the problem is content is only as good as the question. And when I'm a user, back to what you were saying, Sean, when I'm a user and my laptop's not working, the level of sophistication that I have in terms of being able to explain my problem is exactly that. My laptop is broke.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many articles you have. My laptop is broke is not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
And you can ask, well, tell me more about broke. And they're like, broke equal not working, you know? And so you have to be able to have a platform that's really engaged, just like a service desk agent would, right?
Yeah.
Engage with the employee, leverage a series of tools to be able to narrow down what the problem is, and not just rely on the employee to be able to tell you that their X509 certificate expired, because they don't even know what that means, right?
I don't know what that means, Pat.
There you go, right? But that's essentially what it is. It's really taking on the role of an actual agent and engaging with the person to try to narrow down what the problem is before starting to throw a bunch of solutions at them.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, I don't know. From my perspective, that is one of the most impactful and powerful things. Like, I mean, you know, Pat, like running a business is so much of that as you grow in your number of employees. Like, so much of my thinking is around, how do I make my people as productive as possible? How do I make sure they have what they need? How do I make sure that I reduce friction in these things that shouldn't create friction in their job? Like Ari's had issues with his laptop, and so is John, our CTO, that cost them a few hours out of their day. And, you know, for somebody that has a significant impact on the business, and, you know, and I only knew about that because I obviously have direct, you know, line of sight into Ari's world and what he's doing. You know, if you extrapolate these kinds of issues, you know, being locked out of a system for a password reset issue for an hour or 2 hours of lost productivity in a day, multiply that times 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 employees, that is a massive impact to the productivity of your business.
Yeah. Not to mention the experience of the employee. I mean, that's the thing. I think the other side to that too is the productivity, but also like if I'm getting locked out and it takes me 2-3 hours to get a hold of somebody to get my system reset, I'm stressed out because I'm not working and I don't want my boss to call me on it. You know, like I'm not happy. So like you're also creating kind of a toxic environment for your employees as well. So
Yeah. And that actually is one of the reasons why we started to focus more on being proactive as opposed to just being reactive.
Yeah.
You know, we're at a point now where we can basically reach out to someone and say, hey, Ari, we're noticing that your laptop is blue screening. You know, let's go take a look at what's going on. And we can actually involve other tools, to help us go and identify what's going on, et cetera. But we're essentially, because we're not trying to solve all problems, right? What we're trying to do is we are basically the conduit between, the back end, the tools, the technology, all that stuff, and the employee. So they only have to worry about one thing.
Yeah.
And that could be present in Teams and Google Chat and, Slack. It doesn't really matter how it's actually done, but to try to solve that exact problem. I remember we had one particular customer, they're in the financial space, and they would call a lot of the users, they called them silent sufferers, right? Those are the people who have problems, who gave up on calling the service desk to begin with, because they had a bad experience, and they're like, the hell with that. I'm not doing that anymore. And things aren't working. Their performance is impacted, and they're just dealing with it. But, having been in this space now for almost 10 years, one of the things that we've come to realize when we talk to customers and we're trying to help them to understand the ROI of our solution, et cetera, a lot of what we're talking about is kind of a soft ROI. It's hard to assess like the cost that Ari had. And they don't generally use that when even though there is a real benefit there. That's not normally the way that they assess our solutions. The way they assess our solutions and the efficacy of our solutions is, how much time have my service desk agents actually reclaimed? Have they been able to focus on things that are really moving the needle? Have I been able to take heads out of the service desk and put them in other places that have higher shareholder value? That's normally the way that they assess but there's real value there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, we were talking, I think it was, who were we talking to? Prasad. He was calling, it was like, what do you call it? Some FTE. It was like AI FTE or something like that. Ari, you remember that? It was something, a real creative way of like articulating that thing that you're talking about, Pat, which is like, again, it is the direct impact as opposed to indirect impact of the productivity and enablement of employees.
Yeah. Well, and we do that with our product too, because and this was on purpose, right? So let's say you're a ServiceNow shop, maybe you're a Freshservice, it doesn't really matter. Our virtual agent, which by default is called Barista, but you can really rename it whatever you want. When you go into ServiceNow or into your ITSM tool, you actually see that persona as a person. You can actually see like how productive that person is, and you can actually see how that agent, that AI FTE, has actually helped decrease MTTR across all of the tickets.
Yeah.
And so, but it's important to look at it from that perspective, right? Because even though it's not a person, it's actually taken on the role that a lot of people, things that people do.
Well, it's so cool. Like, it takes me back to some of like, like my learnings around design in general. And again, like transformation of human behavior is always an incredibly like interesting space of psychology. And a lot of the really impactful like transformations and mindset to like, and also adoption of technology, they lean into metaphors a lot, right? So they lean into things that are already existing in the world to explain something new that's coming into your world. And it's a really interesting metaphor to think of AI as basically another employee, like another employee that's helping you run your business. How productive is my employee, my AI employee? And being able to actually have insight into that at a really detailed level. I mean, it gives you confidence, right? That you made the right investment and that it's having a real impact.
Well, I mean, we're aggressively doing that with AI, right? We're calling them co-pilots or assistants.
Yeah.
Like, we're
not
already
employees though. Like,
no, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're just going onto the back end. Like up front, we're telling you, hey, work with this assistant or work with this co-pilot. And now on the back end, we're saying, how efficient is that employee that isn't actually a person and is, so yeah, I think it's definitely personifying and building it because it makes it more relatable for sure.
So we're getting late on time. So I want to open it up to you, Pat. Like, is there anything in this space of, AI, agentic, the IT space in general, anything, that's top of mind for you that you'd want to share with the audience? Anything that like you see or hear or have been thinking about that you'd like to share?
Yeah, and I think, because we're talking about automation and all that, I think what I am seeing, agentic AI, the opportunity in the world that we live in is, the stuff that you guys do as an example is really complex, right? Yeah. Building these automations, it's really, really complex. The cool thing that we're actually finding with agentic AI is it actually can end up being an assistant to help you build a lot of these things. Now, you can't necessarily trust it to go build an airline reservation system validation tool or whatever. Like, you still have to do some validation. You still have to test it, but it can actually build that initial 90%, right? And being able to leverage some of these tools to reduce a lot of the heavy lifting that needs to be done on a daily basis, it's phenomenal. The technology is just becoming incredible. It can't do everything on its own, right? And it's, sometimes I hear people, I'm in the Bay Area, so we have a lot of techies, right? And people frequently ask me, I'm a software engineer, is my job going to go away because, this new stuff is coming in? And like, the answer is no, because what we do as humans, we're creative. What these AI engines are good at doing is following our instructions. They're not good at creating stuff. They don't just, innovate on their own. Yeah. They're only as good as the people asking the question. And so that's why what really excites me about agentic AI for our business, possibly for your business, is to be able to empower the people who build these automations, make them a ton more productive. So as opposed to building, 10 automations a week or a month or whatever the right number is, they could do 100.
Yeah.
Right. And you can really now start using the power of that platform to start automating a ton of stuff that historically nobody had the time or the bandwidth to basically go build.
Or even the visibility. I mean, I think that's the other thing is it sees things we don't see. That's one of my favorite ones is that like AI sees things at a level that like, we just don't see. Like they see Sean and Pat and Ari are all men, but they don't see like they all like to wear shirts that have 3 buttons. Like we don't, that's not a detail we care about. But AI is really good. Today.
I got a T-shirt. Sorry.
Yeah,
today I'm the only one with buttons.
Today, Ari.
So yeah. But all right, so I know we are running out of time, but I have the most annoying question that everyone asks me, so I'm going to ask you, Pat, because it's only fair.
42.
Where do you see AI-driven customer service headed in the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, so much is changing so fast. Like, where do you, if you were to take a moonshot guess as to like where you see things going in the future, where do you see it?
Yeah, we're actually working on, and we have some early deployments of these, something that we call autopilot. And the goal here is to basically fully automate your service desk. I think there's an opportunity to eliminate a lot of the tier 1, tier 1.5. Like, you don't need humans to go do that. Save your humans to do things like tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. I think that the technology is getting to a point, and we're in the we have some early implementations of this, where it's essentially monitoring your ticket queues in ServiceNow or whatever, and it's acting like a human, and it's just picking up the tickets and it's starting to work them. And where I see this going is I think we can actually have a world where tickets will never actually really go away. Like, you need tickets, not necessarily because you need a human to work on it. You need it from a compliance standpoint, right? You need it for record keeping standpoint. But I think we're getting to a point where, these tickets get created and you don't actually need any humans whatsoever. This thing can basically on its own pick up a ticket, figure out what needs to be done, do the triage, reach out to the user to get additional information, and then route it. And when that happens, I think it's going to be game changing, because even today we work with a lot of service providers. I mean, they're still putting a lot of butts in seats to go and answer phone calls and do a lot of this, even with our technology, there's still a lot of that. I think we're getting to a point where all of that can actually be fully automated end to end.
You hear that, Sean? Zero ticket IT.
We can't solve the blue screen of death problem. I mean, there are those issues that still require someone. Right?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Pat. This has been a great session, man. Really appreciate all the insights and sharing your experience with us.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Agents of IT. If today's conversation got you thinking differently about your own IT operations, or if you're curious about how agentic automation is helping teams make the zero-ticket vision a reality, please don't forget to like and subscribe. You won't want to miss what's next. See you next time.